Yes, Ernie.
Yeah. Randy, I'd just like to comment. Among the things that need reform in the health workforce is the way we educate them. Without exception, and that includes UP, you listen to any instruction, you sit in a lecture, and you'll find that the way illness is taught is content oriented, not contextual. Meaning, one professor can spend 2-3 hours discussing a disease that the student may never see in his professional life. And yet, he neglects the context in which that is to be taught. For example, if this is so rare, I will start as a professor say, I will teach you this just for information. You'll never see it in your professional life. Therefore, don't think of it as a national problem. On the other hand, if you are talking of a disease like TB, I will devote half of my lectures showing the social aspect and the problems created in the community and the family of TB, rather than dwelling too much on the disease. It is really very easy. Medicine is there, may TB, give me medicine. But how to give everybody the treatment, how to protect the family from contamination, is the greatest challenge to the training program.
You mean this miseducation happens also in the College of Medicine in UP?
Yes, yes, yes. Well, in fairness, where Randy, I'm sorry to give this. When I became chairman of medicine a long time ago, I discovered that one professor is lecturing 32 hours for hypertension. I cannot imagine for the life of me what you will tell in 32 hours for hypertension. So I said, you cut that drastically. What I'm saying in fairness to the College of Medicine, no, this is now being remedied. We are now going into what we call contextual lecture. Put the subject matter in the context of a national scenario.
Okay. We have a question from UP Manila, where the College of Medicine is located. The moderator there is Professor Teresita Mendoza. Please come in, UP Manila.
Good afternoon. This is Professor Teresita Mendoza. Our question is, what mechanism would ensure the safeguarding of service delivery since the proposal is centralized to the Department of Health? So in other words, how can we be assured that DOH will deliver the services efficiently and more accessible to other people?
Thank you, Professor Mendoza.
Thank you. First of all, the proposal is not to re-centralize. No? I am one of the, actually I am very critical of the way the health system was decentralized, but I am not a critic of decentralization per se. In fact, I think that decentralization, bringing responsibility and accountability closer to the people is an important component of the reforms that we are proposing. That is why one of the questions that was asked of the health authorities, they should be willing to devolve real power and responsibility for the management, overall operations of hospitals and other facilities to boards that are truly representative of the communities they serve. Right now, first of all, we don't have any real boards. Whatever boards there are, we have corporatized hospitals at the national level, the health palaces in Quezon City, but the boards are composed of the top executives of the Department of Health, plus the representative from the Department of Budget and Management, not a single consumer representative, not anyone who has ever had heart surgery, unless, of course, some members of the top management of the OH have a problem. But no, I think that you misunderstand. We do not propose to go back to the old highly centralized system. What we need to do is to refine the way we have been decentralized, have a highly centralized coordinating mechanism. That's the Department of Health, and the Department of Health can very well do that if it is empowered. But it need not have actual control of everything. It need not take over from the governors of the local government stuff. I think that is an issue that is why what we're proposing is not an rescission of the local government code, but rather a review and some amendments.
But in your health, universal health care proposal, you mentioned community-based health boards as an aspect of the democratization of the governance of the health system. Perhaps you could pick up on that. Can you
Yes,
elaborate?
I think that is a concept that works in many situations. It is important that first of all, that the boards have real power that is independent of the appointing power of the people. So one of the problems, for example, all of our national hospitals, we have 72 DOH, so-called DOH retained hospitals. The chief of hospital of those facilities, the director or the head of that facility, is responsible only to the Secretary of Health. In fact, in all aspects of the operation of the hospital, to all intents and purposes, a chief of hospital is practically king, and he will listen only to his Secretary of Health. Now, there is no accountability. He may or may not respond to media whenever something goes wrong, but there's no real discussion of common benefits and so forth. So perhaps we need to look at the structures of governance within our facilities.
Dr. Melgar, I think, wants to say something.
I think what we need to develop is actually citizens' participation in health, and that is not happening everywhere. We see bits of it at the national level, where national NGOs actually sometimes on an ad hoc basis are called in to look at certain policies. But we don't have a constant, all the way to the ground where you have citizens groups actually engaging actively, not just monitoring the quality of services, which is very important for patients groups, but making sure that community people's perspectives about the cost, about the quality of medicines is really formally included into the policy making of each level.
But is there room for such citizens groups to intervene officially in the health organization?
We are saying there should be, Randy. If they're not there right now, we should create them.
Okay. We'll take 2 questions from the floor, and then we'll take a question from the UP Open University.